talk about an approach that we worked on as Foxit for a while now, talking about how to make e-signing interoperable. My name is Carsten Heiermann. I'm Chief Evangelist at Foxit, and I'm also a member of the board of the PDF Association. So what we hear about today is basically a proposal by Foxit PDF community for a standards extension.
Das geht mit dieser App leider nicht.
Okay, my Siri is acting up here. Okay, so one slide of the company is allowed. So let me really quickly talk about Foxit. Foxit is a Silicon Valley company offering better flex, better fit, and better deal for your PDF needs. We are obviously offering PDF editing and creation on all the platforms, mobile, desktop, cloud. We're offering an e-signing or e-signature platform, which is maybe where this idea started from that I'm going to introduce to you today. We're offering enterprise scale document conversion, anything to PDF on a large scale, and obviously everything we do, we offer also as app development kits for all the platforms, including cloud APIs and so on. Okay. First part of the presentation is a little bit about why we're doing this, and I'm going to go through that real quick. And the second part of the presentation is definitely more technical, introducing the standard extension on how we want to extend PDF to allow better e-signing practice. Signature market as such is already quite substantial, 2.8 billion in last year. What's more interesting, I guess, for everybody is that it's expected to grow pretty substantial with 31% CAGR until the course of 2026. And according to that study that I mentioned on the lower right side of that slide here, it is because there is a certain mega trends going on. And it's not just general digitization trends because of we're all post-COVID now and everybody understands need to digitize. It's also about government regulations. It's about specific aspects of financial crimes that happened that need digital signatures right now. It's fueled by government programs, and banking and financials are set to be the most interesting vertical for signatures as such. Okay, definitely a big market to address. Definitely something worth spending some effort into and trying to do things better than we do today. Signing, use cases, what is it? I mean, we all know it from the pen and paper situation. You print out the document, you want to send it to someone, like a letter or so, you take your pen, you sign it. And that's obviously something that is also available in the digital signatures world. Self-signing a document on your own intent. The other way around is somebody, and you also know that, somebody sent you a document and says, please sign that for me. So somebody prepared that document. Somebody in that document added a couple of fields for you to fill in, maybe a date, a title, a company name, or something like that. And it has a place where you can put your signature. Wet signature on a piece of paper with filled fields, equally to what happens in the digital world. A prepared document with fields to fill and a signature to place of some sort. Then we have obviously situations where not only one person signs, but many persons sign that document. So an email goes out with a document to 3 parties saying, please sign that document for me. Or the other way around is an email goes out to party 1. Please sign that document and send it back to me. Then it goes out to party 2 by the initiator, and it's signed sequentially. Signing following corporate signing policy is also something to think of when we want to do things better in the world of signatures. So for instance, at a given purchasing value of X amount of dollars, 2 people have to sign from that department and then 1 person from the other department, not really saying who in person actually has to sign it. Signing in parallel, you send out the document, as I mentioned before, by email to many people. They all sign individually, and what you receive back is a bunch of documents. Number of signers is the number of documents you have. You might want to tie that together again and notarize it or seal it if you want, or you just have a multi-part contract, as it is also known from the pen and paper world. Signing and stamping on behalf of the company is something that is a use case that is very interesting in the Asian markets, for instance. There's rarely a individual signature by an employee that needs to be placed on a contract, but rather the corporate seal or one of the different levels of corporate seals has to be applied to a document in order to express the signature. And then there's, in the digital world, a whole bunch of different things than what we know from the pen and paper situation, which is, for instance, filing taxes using a certificate to secure or sign the transaction that you're doing there, other than really signing on a piece of paper. Okay, and I could go on with that, but pretty much aware. You're pretty much aware of what I'm talking about. So what is signing? Signing basically is capturing a signer's intent. So an expressed will. We have to record the intent, and that in the old days was like a handshake agreement, or somebody said yes in front of a witness or something like that. It could be something like checking a box. It could be a wet signature, an electronic signature, obviously. What is important as part of that concept is we need to make sure what actually somebody agreed to, or where somebody expressed his will about or his intent about. And that is, in the digital world, we have to make sure that in addition to capturing the signature, we have to capture the status of the document at the moment of the signature to really later on be able to verify somebody signed that document and he really said to that version of the document, he said yes, right? So proof that it actually happened is a verification, and actually who did it. Authentication is an important part of that, alongside with a more complicated concept, which is for the validation step, was the document changed or not? And in any case, the document was changed. When it's going to be signed, it is changed, but a validator obviously does not flag the signature as such as a change to the document. But from the pen and paper world, somebody gets an agreement and scratches out paragraph number 3 and then signs. That is obviously a change that is flagged by ink, or that has to be flagged by a digital by a validator piece of software in the digital world. When somebody just fills in the desired and allowed date field, that's potentially not a change. So that is something we will come back to as well. So how is it done in the digital world? Keywords, just real quick: hashing, fingerprinting, cryptographic methods will be done, and an audit trail is created. I mentioned the witness before for the handshake agreement. That is something like an audit trail. You can go back and verify that the handshake actually took place by asking a person, or in the digital world, you can go somewhere where all the events and the related data to what happened to the document during signing is stored. That's what we call the audit trail. So it's events and the relevant data, and we'll definitely look at audit trail a little later again. PDF and signatures, going back together a long way, as you all know. It maybe started as an idea to mimic pen and paper situation in the digital world, paperless office kind of stuff. Digital certificates were introduced with private key infrastructure, obviously increasing trustworthiness, but also you have to buy, own, or lease, or yearly pay for a digital certificate. There's an authority that issues those digital certificates. So there's a trust built, and they are valid or not. That is all arranged there. In PDF, we have Acroform with a special field for the signature, where the signature goes in and where is defined what part of the document, and that's really not only going to I sign page 1 and 2, but it goes back to what part of the document as a file format is actually signed. What is inside, what is secured and signed, and what is outside that can still be changed or something like that. And when it comes to multiple signatures in a row sequentially, then a document is obviously signed already, and then when you sign it again, incremental updates are used, and multiple signatures can be applied, and also you can go back in the chain and have, again, something like an audit trail or a verification method to go back. What is the document? I said it in the very first place. What exactly did somebody sign? Okay. In PDF, we do have the option to use individual or third-party signature handlers, adding options, whole lot of options, but also adding complexity. These are used to, for instance, say our digital signature handler does X, Y, and Z and limits all the options to what our business application has a need for or what our rules are like. Another concept that we will also see again in our proposal is the so-called certificate signature, where the initiator, somebody who prepares a document for signing, can make sure that everybody signs what the initiator actually created. So before there's even, let's say, visible or an approval signature put on that piece of paper, it's already signed. It's already with a cryptographic method protected, so that the initiator can trust in the workflow and can understand that the first and all the other approval signatures were placed on a document that is unchanged to what the initiator created. Then any kind of attacks can be done. I mean, somebody tampers with his clock, and in some contracts, the time is important when a document was signed, and you can dial back your clock. Of course, there's a concept in PDF, timestamp signatures, where you can make sure that you have a trusted and then certified also timestamp for that signature in your document, and on it goes. Validation doesn't make it any easier. Again, I mentioned what is allowed change, what is real change. Did the person have the permission to do that change? For instance, a form field identity needs to be validated, and that is also, from my perspective, adding a lot of complexity. Is the validator actually is a piece of software, right? And that validator has to judge whether or not a change needs to be flagged or a change is cool. So is there a real change and somebody signed on something different, or is there just a change in the PDF file that is actually intentionally or to be accepted because it is the signature itself or something like that? Okay, not easy. Therefore, people went out there and said, okay, we need to try to limit the options we have. We need to try and tighten it down. So digital signatures are described in ISO, a PDF standard. Obviously, PARES is a whole group of standards explaining how to use it in this and this and this case, which is helpful for the specific workflows where you now all of a sudden know exactly how to do it, but which obviously makes it even more complicated for poor implementers who actually have to create now a piece of software in the digital signature field. And it's also very complex for that poor user out there who just wants to sign electronically his lease agreement and has no interest in learning anything about PARES and part 1 to part 6. Regulations are then available in different markets with different names. eSign Act, we know IDAS in Germany, and you can read out the list yourself. Consensus of all of them is the document has to be digitally signed. So a trusted certificate, CA, issued by an authority has to be used, and then there is a variety of other requirements defined in those regulations. Technically, various standards for identity, for authentication method, for checking an ID, for using signature devices or cryptographic devices, tokens, fingerprints, whatever, are introduced through all this regulation. But all of them have in common that in the end, we have a PDF that is signed with a digital certificate, and that is holding what we call a document-based signature. So when you remember my definitions, document-based signature, it's a self-containing document where everything that is concerning the signature process is in the document, the certificate itself, but also the record of all the events, what we call the audit trail, and all this information is in the document. So that is an advantage. It's a self-contained signed document, coming with a disadvantage, obviously. Using digital certificates is costly, and it's seen to be complex and not something for the occasional signer who signs an electronic document once in every 2 years or something like that. On the other hand, that's a big market as well. There is what I want to call eSigning or e-signature, which is more or less like a legal concept. Digital signature, as I defined it before, is an implementation, but only one implementation of that legal concept. E-signing itself is often seen as that lease agreement, right? So how do I make my signature appear on this PDF file? So people resort back to putting a scanned image of their signature there. They are using a stamp of their signature. They are mimicking like a handwritten font that almost looks like a written signature or something like that appears on a PDF document. It's seen to be, and it's truly much easier for people to use. Typically, these are cloud-based services that use also cryptographic methods, but for the end user, it's just a login into a system. So he gets a request to sign a document, then goes on the platform, creates an account or has an account, logs in, and says yes by clicking a button. And the cryptographic method is then introduced by the platform, by the signature platform, by the cloud solution or something like that, and not by the individual users. So that said, a lot of what is concerning the audit trail, or a lot of information around the audit trail, a lot of the additional data is not going in the document, and the individual signatures of the individual persons not going in the document. And the audit trail data is not standardized. It is, I can name it, Foxit sign, Adobe sign, DocuSign, all of them. They are doing it, and they're storing it inside their cloud platforms in their individual ways of doing it. And if you want to validate that, you have to go back to these services and ask them about it, because the document itself is so-called sealed by the platform, and the platform says, yes, everything went all right with these 3 signatures, and I put my seal on it to prove it. But you, as a initiator or any other interested party, do not directly have access to that audit data of every individual signer. So that's a big difference, because now all of a sudden, other than in the digital signatures, you do not have a self-containing document, but it's very easy to use. So easy versus hard, I already mentioned it when it comes to e-signing versus digital signature. Certificate, oh, that should be the other way around. Should be just a login, easy, versus hard, using a certificate, and costly. It's also different whom you trust, right? Do you trust in the authorities issuing a certificate, or do you trust in a vendor of the e-signing platform who actually tells you by his seal everything went all right with this signature process? It's also document-based versus application-based. Either you have a self-containing document with all the audit trail information inside the document, or you have this sealed document that I mentioned where all the details about the signers are often not visible, but inside the cloud application, stored somewhere in the vendor's database. Our vision now is, and I put it here to just admit it, we implemented both. So you might know Foxit PDF Editor, and we obviously have digital signature opportunity or options in there. We also have Foxit Sign or Foxit eSign, a cloud-based e-signing services, and we implemented that. Our vision now is, how about we put both of that together and create an open document-based e-signing standard. We're looking for creating we want to extend the PDF standard in our proposal to be able to create interoperable signing workflows where all the participants, the initiator and all the signers, have a freedom of choice for the tools they want to use to do their thing, right? And not being tied into one specific cloud system that the initiator picked for all of the participants. By that way, we could also have a much easier integration of the signing service directly into an application. Any kind of application, cloud application, desktop application, business application of sort, could then easily integrate that signing step, and therefore create something like a trusted workflow as an idea. So where every step of document-based workflow can, without leaving the business application, be signed and made sure and approved. On the other hand, we want to keep it together, so not resort back to the mechanisms of the digital of the cloud platform. We want to have that audit trail inside the document. We want to have a self-contained signed document, as it is not only more natural, but when you think about archiving that document, all of a sudden you would have a document that is self-containing, where you do not have to go back to the eSigning platform to validate an individual signature. You can just go to the document in your archive, and everything you need is in there for an independent validation. And most importantly, we also want to keep it easy to use. So in other words, we want to allow various authentication methods that an end user or a corporate user or somebody else might already have. Things like authenticate yourself using, and I'm saying it, Facebook, or authenticate yourself using your corporate account or something like that. In our concept, we would still allow, but we would not mandate personal certificates in there. So here, now talking about how, I mean, it sounds good, doesn't it? Now we have to explain what's the idea. On the right side, you see a screenshot from a document, from the table of content of a document that we created, and hand over, I'll talk about that later, what the procedure is. We want to extend the PDF standard in order to reach that goal that I expressed on the previous page by extending the signer dictionary, and I'm going to show you how. By adding to acroform fields, and I'm going to show you, or by adding acroform fields, and I'm going to show you how. By extending the signature directory, I'm going to show you how. And by adding dictionaries for the audit trail, and by now you can guess it, I'm going to show you how. Initial step of workflow, e-signing, document-based e-signing workflow, as we have it in mind, is an initiator, as we know it, identifies the signers, defines a signing order, and creates inside the PDF document the typical fields that we all know for a digital signing procedure. Predefined fields or places where a date, a time, a title, a printed name, and obviously also the signer's signatures should go on that to be signed document. We allow in our concept multiple signature fields per signer. So for instance, there could be initials on every page, and then a full signature on the last page of the contract, and another full signature on the exhibit, and so on. And all these fields we keep together by using the definition of the signer entry in that fields. It will get a little clearer on the next page. We allow optionally to, what we all know, apply the certified signature by the initiator, and we would just reuse, as it is known, a doc MDP field, MDP parameters to define permissions and so on. Another way of doing it is the initiator does not prepare all the fields in there, but somebody just creates a document, for instance, an order form, puts it on his web page for download, and then any person downloading it individually can just self-sign that document, which is also a concept. I do have a slide for that as well in our proposal here. So here's a little bit the PDF objects and how they are related to each other. First, the signer. What is the signer? The signer is a PDF object, abstract PDF object holding the signer ID. So who is it? holding an authentication method that is defined by the initiator. If the initiator wants, it could even be more than one allowed method to authenticate. It can have a private message for any kind of workflow purposes, and the initiator can say whether or not the signer or one of the signers has to use a personal certificate to sign. In our proposal, we just have a field to say required or not, yes or no. But we had discussions going around whether or not it would make sense to give it another qualifying parameters, for instance, saying has to use digital certificate and it has to be this or that CA or this or that specific certificate for instance, for a corporate use case or something like that. Authentication method or type in our proposal is open for implementers, and it has a couple of predefinitions. For instance, it could be things like you can authenticate with your phone number, including SMS or two-factor authentication even. You could use your email address to identify yourself, or typical services, I mentioned them before, sign in with Google, sign in with Apple, and so on. We could allow, or we have discussed and put in our proposal, things like digital ID cards, as we have them in Germany, for instance, where there is a certificate in your quote-unquote passport, in your ID card. Corporate database, I mentioned already, OAuth and tokens, and that is another concept, it could even be left open when there is just a very low demand. You have to sign off on your time off request in a company or something like that. The initiator might not even have a big need for you to authenticate yourself with a specific method. You just do it as you want as a signer. The fields we want to extend, we're looking at the standard Acroform methods, let's say, around digital signatures. We are deriving from that, and therefore our proposal is still in line with PARES, for instance. From the standard fields, we look at title, company, printed name, or from the signature field derived, we have various signature fields allowed, for instance, to initial and to sign by the same signer. All these fields, again, I mentioned it before, are tied together by the signer being mentioned in here. So going back to this object here, okay? So that we know, in this case, 4 fields in here, they belong together to signer 1, and another 3 or 4 fields might be for signer 2. Validation, yeah, fields tied together. Validation, the signer initials, and then he signs with his full name on the last page. We think that is not something a validator should show as a change. And our proposal now says when there's allowed that we have per signer multiple places to sign with initials and maybe full signature, and maybe a personal stamp if it comes to Asian markets or something like that. But it is all referring to the same signature directory of that one signer. So you can see there's one digital signature in here, but many signing fields are referring to that in our proposal, making it a very flexible solution that is also from a validation standpoint very easy to use. The audit trail. Now it's coming back to the self-contained document, to why we call this a document-based signature proposal, or a document-based signature as such. The audit trail has to go inside the document and not in a cloud application for the various reasons I mentioned in the beginning. We have, we're using a prop event standardized form defined place to store. Other than in the cloud applications, we defined a place and a way how to store that. It's an extension of the signature directory, which is not a completely unknown idea. That was proposed, that we had efforts like that before. This is a proposal. We can still discuss it in the community, and we can also change it if somebody feels there's a better method of doing that. We're totally open to that. Our goal is really to create a document-based e-signing solutions. Our goal is not to stick to exactly that solution for it. So there goes all the events. Event types can be custom as well by implementers because there is a specific step in a corporate workflow or something like that. Validation should not mark specific things as change. I mentioned that before, and it's all from the audit trail associated with the signer in our proposal. Okay, hurrying up a little bit. Self-signing, quickly explained, fits perfectly into our proposal here. Self-identification, defining and filling fields, signing, the audit trail is created. Again, the story about changes or not, and can use certified, signature, digital signature or certificate or not. And self-signing can even be sequential. Many people can sign a document again and again and again in our concept as well. Yeah, coming to an end here, I just want to have a real call to action here, like a pro. In the end, join us in our quest. We're aiming for a PDF standard extension, maybe ultimately. We're currently aiming for a PDF Association's technical document. Foxit on our end, we drafted the proposal document, again, with the goal in mind to have a simple and easy to adopt version 1 of document-based e-signing. We did a proof of concept implementation for all of that. That is working and showing that all of what we proposed is working out in the end. And there's an invitation going out now. Maybe you come join us working in the PDF Association Digital Signature TWG. We're looking, hoping that this group will turn the draft into a solid specification. And the proposal as we created it is totally open for every one of you to contribute to it and bring your own ideas into it. And again, we have thought about different aspects that you might already have in mind already, like parallel signing, different authentication or specific other authentication methods, more specifications around the audit trail, multiple documents to be signed. And we even thought about standardizing an API around that so that it's more interoperable in an automated fashion between different vendors and so on and so forth. But we had in mind that at least the version 1 should be simple and easy to adopt before we overcomplicate it and then end up in dying in beauty, right? But that can be discussed in the TWG. You're all invited to that. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. And I'm open for questions, obviously. But Duff, back to you.
Carsten, great. That was a really fascinating and I suspect highly provocative presentation. You can download Carsten's slides from his presentation today from the handouts panel. And we do have some time to take a few for Carsten to take a few questions. And there are a few questions here for you. So the first here, the problem of audit trail transparency is broader than PDF. Why not extend a standard such as CADES and/or extend a commonly used certificate profile like PKIX? In other words, what's the benefit of tying it into PDF ad hoc instead of building on standards that already integrate with PDF?
Maybe that goes back to our concept of keeping it easy for implementers and keeping it easy to adopt and easy to understand. On the other hand, second part of my answer, no, it has to be, we're going to meet in the digital signature TWG and we'll in length discuss the pros and cons of all these concepts.
Yep. Okay, next question. What's your proposed alternative for a personal certificate and which cryptographic enforcement mechanism would use it instead?
Okay, the difference between personal certificate and a vendor certificate or a corporate certificate, or not so sure. No, that's not what you're talking about. You're
Well,
talking about somebody authenticates himself.
yeah, well, the question is, what's your you're proposing an alternative for the conventional personal certificate,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
so which
Mhm.
cryptographic enforcement mechanism would you use instead? And the questioner's welcome to add a clarifying question if they'd like.
Not sure I can answer that right now,
Okay.
but
Hopefully we'll
let
get.
me try. We're proposing to merge the eSigning platform approach together with the self-containing document. Okay. At this point in time, the eSigning platforms as well also use cryptographic methods to protect the document, but they are not requiring individual certificates from the individual people. Probably not answering your question, but okay, maybe
All
we
right.
also take that to the group and answer it there. I mean, we have a fully written document that we can go back to.
Yeah, well, that's actually the next question: is the draft specification already available somewhere?
Yes, it is. If it is not, then it's my fault. But I'm going to definitely, I discussed it yesterday with my group. I took the responsibility to send it to the mailing list of the digital signature TWG for all the members there to take a look at it. And I failed on doing that. But once we finished here, I'm going to do it.
Okay, so just to clarify, so you're sending your proposal to the
Yes.
Digital Signature Technical Working Group, which is a
Yes.
PDF Association members only group, and that's where you're planning to develop this in the near term.
Exactly. So that is our approach to it. I think it's a good place to scrutinize, to go into this proposal, make sure that it is very robust before we take it any further. But on the other hand, it's also no secret. So somebody wants to take a look at that proposal. My email is on screen here. Just send me an email. It's not a secret.